Oh,
This is
wow,
insane.
that it is unbelievable.
What he missed is the brilliant next move.
So let's get into this. It's Magnus Carlsen with black against Fabiano Caruana with white, and it's Tata Steel Masters round 8. So Fabi here kicks off with pawn e4. e5 from Magnus, now we get the knights developing, and bishop b5 starts the Roy Lopez or Spanish game. We see a6 kicking that bishop, and if you're not aware, you can't capture and win a pawn here because then black's got this follow-up. You hit both of these, you're winning the pawn back. So instead we see Fabi retreating that bishop. Now this other knight develops. We see castles. Again, black doesn't grab this pawn because then the rook can be coming and things. You know, you're opening lines towards your king before it's safe. So instead we see bishop e7, and now rook e1 defends this pawn, and there's a genuine threat to now eliminate this knight and win a pawn. So we see this one breaking the pin, the bishop drops back, now black castles, and here we see one of these so-called anti-martial moves. So the main move in this position for white is pawn to c3, sets up the d4 break. But then there's this Marshall gambit which starts with d5, named after a famous chess player, Marshall. I think he was Frank Marshall, can't remember. But anyway, after takes, this pawn is dropping at the end of the line. So you are gambiting, but you get a lot of compensation with the bishops and an attack against white. And at the top level, that's quite a good equalising weapon. So here Fabi plays a4 instead. We've also seen pawn h3, things like that. So with the pressure on the pawn pinned down here, we now see the pawn kicking on, and now a5 played. So it cements this pawn here, could be targeted later on. And now d6 from Magnus, he carries on in the centre. Now Fabi goes c3, that classic move, preparing the d4 break. And after rook b8, coming to this b file, which will soon be opening, now we see a timeout just to play pawn to h3. Always play pawn h3, right, as Ben Feingold would say. So you give the king some luft, but also you stop bishop g4, which could be annoying once you've played d4. You want that knight to be supporting. Now black does the same. We see pawn d4 played, and now Magnus takes on c3. The pawn recaptures, and here he actually takes on d4. Now you have to be careful when you play such a move, because if you give white a big centre, that can be quite dangerous long term. They control a lot of squares, you can get a bit squashed. But it's just switched to the analysis board here. It's gone greyed out because this wasn't played. Now why didn't Fabi go with the pawn? Well, then there's this d5 follow-up for black. This is the key move, and black's kind of equalising with this move basically. Now if the pawn kicks on, you've got knight e4, you're doing fine. And if takes here, well then you simply recapture, again no issues. So that's why here we see knight takes, and now again the top computer move is to take here and push on with d5. But instead we see the bishop just developing, defending that knight, and so Fabi carries on with bishop to f4. He hits this critical diagonal, and e5 is definitely in his mind at the right moment, or possibly taking first, then e5. So we see the knight land on e5, blocking out that bishop, and you don't want to be capturing. You give up your bishops when you do this. That's not ideal on an open board like this. Plus you'd be kicking this knight out of its nice central square. So instead we see Fabi developing his knight. Now you'll see the eval bar drop a bit there. The computer doesn't love this move. It wanted to kind of hold steady, just nudge the bishop back to g3, something like that. But okay, Fabi still keeps a small advantage here. He's got the central pawn, he's got more space, and this knight does have some ideas of coming back into the game, you know, something like this sort of journey. Magnus now brings his rook to this e-file. We see the bishop nudging back, preparing pawn f4 as we'll see. Magnus drops his bishop back to open the eyes of the rook. Pawn f4 comes, the knight retreats, and now Fabi just goes wrong here. So this pawn is attacked, and you have to do something about that. One of the top moves is bishop c2, covering it, or bishop h4, creating a pin here. But what Fabi does is e5. Now this is the most human move to play. Looks so nice. You get that break in, Magnus captures, pawn recaptures, and where is this knight going? It's got no jumps, right? The queen's covering here, and if you go knight h7, well this is horrible. You can actually crash through here with check, follow up with queen f3, and then this piece is dropping. It's just all over basically. So the knight's got nowhere to go. What does Magnus do? Well, he takes on d4. Now, the pawn has to recapture. If you go with the queen, well, then you drop this bishop here. You know, the queen has to stay with the bishop. So pawn goes, and now this is where Magnus uncorks his first brilliant move. So he doesn't move that knight. He goes bishop to c6, and there's some awesome tactics in the air. Feel free if you want to kind of pause and work them out. But if this knight was captured, which didn't happen, well, it's all about this queen, which is a bit overloaded. So you first take here with check. Now the queen can't recapture, or again your bishop drops. So the bishop would have to take back, and now the rook takes on b3, again just overloading that queen, because after the queen captures, it can't stay with the defense of the rook. So you'd have check, king goes, rook drops. Really, really nice tactics in the air. So none of that possible. The knight wasn't captured. And this is where Fabi makes a terrible blunder. But before I show you that one, if you want to blunder less, then check out this blunder prevention tool at Aim Chess, who are sponsoring today's video. Now, this is just one example of many tools which are tailored and personalized for you. Because what they'll do is pull in your game data from Chess or chess.com, analyze it, produce a report, and then you can use that to know where to improve most and all of their awesome tools. So it's completely free to sign up. Follow the link down below, give it a go, and if you do like it, you can then get discount using the code EPIC at checkout for your first month, 30%. So back to the game here. Fabi now blunders with bishop to c2, and the eval bar goes nuts, dropping off a cliff because you've just left the control of the d5 square. This is the problem. What should Fabi have played? Well, various different moves. Queen d3, for example, was okay, but after this one, the queen hits d5, threatens mate. Now Fabi blocks, I'm sure he saw all this, but now for the detail which Fabi probably missed. Magnus uncorks his second brilliant move, still doesn't move this knight. Now can you guess what it is? And I'll give you a clue. On Gotham Chess, Levy loves to scream about this piece when a sack is incoming. So the move played is rook b4. Now I'm not going to scream the rook. I'll leave that to you guys. Maybe when I'm a bigger YouTuber or something. And on that point, if you can hit the like button, that would help me hugely. So the rook is now attacking this pawn, adding more pressure, threatening to capture it. And this time, if the knight drops, well, again, you're taking here, queen recaptures, and there's a problem once again with the loose rook in the corner. This is the thing. So that's why now we see the king shuffle over here, keep itself safe, and now Magnus takes here on d4, the queen slides away, and now this is classic Magnus. So you can go rook d2 here to continue the attacking ideas, keep more pieces on the board. But Magnus goes knight e4. Now you can't live with that knight there, it does have to be chopped. And this mass liquidation is actually steering things towards an endgame where Magnus is only a pawn up. However, the eval bar here says -4.5. So even though it's only a pawn, it's just an overwhelming positional advantage because you've got the bishop pair on an open board and these pawns are split and weak. So the knight hops into the game. The rook activates down this open file, looking to hit that square. Fabi comes to the c file here, Magnus activates, and now Fabi goes for a pawn swap here. So he kicks on, sacrifices a pawn, but opens his bishop to capture the c pawn. Magnus shuffles the rook, hits the bishop, and now after it comes back here, defending this rook because of the pin, this simple move actually ended the game. Here Fabi resigned. Why? Well, the knight has to move. It's attacked twice. Say you come to b2 or e5, it doesn't really matter. You can then chop the rook, bishop recaptures, and bishop b4 is coming. And you're now losing a second pawn. That's going to be overwhelming. This is Magnus Carlsen. If you enjoyed this game and want to see another incredible battle between these two players, then check out this video on screen. Thanks very much for watching and see you soon.